inspired by common folklore in Turkey and includes elements claimed to be based on real events. However, it is not entirely possible to confirm its authenticity. Many stories involving encounters with jinn are said to have occurred throughout Turkey, often passed down as oral traditions. Regarding places like Sapadere village, the following beliefs are common. Dwellings of jinn. According to folk beliefs, certain locations are considered to be inhabited by jinn, and entering these places without permission is said to bring misfortune. Possession stories. Many accounts involve jinn possessing people, and these situations are often addressed through prayers or rituals. These stories frequently feature spiritual healers, prayers, and agreements made with jinn. Forests and cursed areas. Forests and isolated regions are common settings for jinn stories. These tales often depict strange sounds, shadows, and supernatural phenomena occurring in such areas. While the details within the story cannot be verified with concrete evidence, they reflect the kind of narratives that many believe to be true. These stories remain an integral part of local folklore and cultural identity in Turkey.
Sapadere village and the Forbidden Zone. It was a typical autumn morning in November 1993 in Sapadere village, nestled at the foot of the Taurus mountains in Türkiye. The villagers believed that some parts of the surrounding forest were cursed, especially a place called Oluk. It was said to be the dwelling of jinn, and for years no one dared to hunt there. However, 4 young men from the village, Ali, Hassan, Veli, and Mehmet, were either too brave or too reckless to believe such tales. Ignoring the warnings of their elders, they set out one morning to hunt in the forbidden area. Armed with rifles, backpacks filled with provisions, and a few flashlights, they climbed the trail and ventured deep into the forest. Day 1. Spurs in the dark, by noon, they decided they had found a good spot for hunting and stopped to rest in the area known as Oluk. They sat under the trees, ate their meals, and lay down to rest. But soon, something strange happened. As Ali was about to drift off to sleep, he thought he heard a whisper. It sounded like a human voice. Words were incomprehensible. He looked around slowly but saw no one. When he mentioned it to his friends, Hassan admitted he had heard the same thing. Meanwhile, Mehmet claimed to have seen a shadow, a figure darting quickly among the trees. The group began to panic, hastily gathered their belongings, and decided to return to the village. But on their way back, they heard a sound from deep within the forest, a scream, eerily like that of a woman. As the sound grew closer, it became sharper and more terrifying. They ran back to the village in a frenzy, and that night, none of them spoke of what had happened. Day 2. The warning ignored. A week later, one of the village elders, Ismail, gave the young men a stern warning. Never go back to that place. It is the dwelling of jinn, and they have started to notice you. Yet the boys didn't take him seriously. Instead, decided to make a second trip, this time with a larger group. Their second visit, the uneasiness began almost immediately. As they walked deeper into the forest, the air grew colder. The wind through the trees created an eerie hum. At one point, Hassan paused and looked back, claiming he had seen a white figure hovering between the trees. It seemed to float rather than walk. He kept this to himself but quickened his pace. When they returned home, Mehmet suddenly collapsed. His eyes were wide open, but he seemed unconscious. His lips trembled as he muttered incomprehensible words. The village exorcist Mehmet's condition caused panic in the village. His family immediately took him to the local spiritual healer, known as the Chinchi Hoka. During the Hoka's prayers, Mehmet convulsed and suddenly began to cry. Hoka declared that Mehmet had been possessed by a jinn, but it was only a warning. The place they visited is sacred to the jinn, he said. They live there and conduct their own affairs. The boys disturbed them by entering without permission. The Hoka performed special prayers and conducted a ritual using soil from the village cemetery to appease the jinn's anger and remove their hold over Mehmet. After a few days, Mehmet recovered, but he refused to ever speak about the experience again. The cursed history of the zone. The Hoka explained to the boys and the villagers that the area was cursed due to a murder that had occurred there long ago. Years earlier, a woman had killed her husband in that forest and buried his body there. The crime was forgotten as the woman was never caught. According to the legend, the woman had made a pact with the Jinn to protect the area, turning it into their domain. Now, the forest was a dwelling for both restless spirits and Jinn. The final warning: even after Mehmet's recovery, the boys never returned to that place. Villagers continued to share the story, passing it down through generations to remind others of the forest's curse. To this day, the elders of Sapadere village warn people to stay away from the Oluk area. Some claim they still hear whispers and eerie sounds coming from the forest at night.